Discussion continues on the Prime Minister's decision to replace Columbus's ships on the National Coat of Arms with a steel pan. We are now joined by head of the Tobago Business Chamber and attorney at law, Martin George. Mr. George, good morning.
Yeah, hi. Good morning to you, Marlon, and good morning to your viewers on TV6, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. Mr. George, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Well, as I would have discussed with Shabaka a short while ago, we as a country, we have had about a day now to think about the Prime Minister's suggestion, read the coat of arms. What is your impression this morning?
Well, the thing is, Marlon, I would like to take a look historically at what a coat of arms is supposed to represent. It's something that was used to identify your troops, identify your army, identify your soldiers when going into battle. That was the purpose of having a coat of arms. So, from the perspective of identity, I would think there is a compelling argument to say that in the year 2024 and going forward, it's difficult to make a case to say that those three ships continue to represent Trinidad and Tobago heading into the future. So I think just from that perspective alone, there is merit in the argument to say that, look, hey, maybe we need to consider a change.
Yeah.
All right. And you see, Marlon, we have to remember also that history is written by the conqueror, not the conquered. So therefore, historically, we would have, been taught as children in school, that Columbus discovered the West Indies, discovered Trinidad and Tobago. And, of course, that's their narrative that they would have put out as the conquerors, because history is recorded by the conquerors. But, of course, as we became more enlightened, you would recognize that, look, hey, there were indigenous peoples here, the Caribs, the Arawaks, the Amerindians, who were here before. So who are you to come and say you have discovered it? You have only now realized we exist, if you understand me. So, there's a lot at play here. And, while there are persons who, say, well, it is part of our history and then therefore should not be removed from the coat of arms, I would also say that we have to recognize that the steel pan is also part of our history. So that is something that we have to put into the mix also. While you want to say, from a historical perspective, those ships, yes, may have formed part of our history, the reality is that when you think back to, the governors like Chacon and the other governors who would have ruled Trinidad, who would have banned the locals from having their normal celebrations, and therefore they had to have their celebrations in secret, and therefore they would beat their drums and play their tambu bamboo. And it's from this you had the evolution of the steel pan. Then we will definitely be able to say that there is also an historical perspective to having the steel pan there on the coat of arms.
Yeah.
So I like to just treat it from a factual perspective.
Yeah. A view has been expressed thus far that the Prime Minister is attempting to rewrite history.
Well, the thing is, it's not a question of rewriting history. I think it's a question of looking at how we as a nation have evolved, how we have developed, and what we are looking at from a futuristic perspective. So therefore, as I say, the history which has been written by the conqueror, we are now looking at it from a different perspective to say, well, hey, listen, is it really accurate to say that you discovered Trinidad and Tobago when there were people living here before? And then, Marlon, you look at the atrocities which occurred, the brutality which, was attendant upon this conquest. and you ask yourself, is this really something that you want to continue to celebrate, to glorify, to deify in the year 2024 and going forward? We're not changing the fact that, yes, Columbus did arrive and his ships, yes, of course, we're not trying to change that fact. But the question is, you go back to the issue of what a coat of arms is supposed to represent. And if it is to represent your identity as a nation, I would think that, the steel pan, as proposed by the Prime Minister, really begins to represent a more accurate reflection of Trinidad and Tobago in the year 2024 and going forward.
Yeah, let me ask a question that I made earlier, that I asked earlier. Let's look at the impact, the positive impact on society. What are the benefits of this decision?
I'm not sure there's any positive impact on society, because there are those who are saying that, look, hey, there are much more important social issues to be dealt with, in the sense of, you look at the state of our roads, our hospitals, you look at the state of crime in the country. So, I mean, there is definite merit in those who say that there are much more important issues as a nation for us to deal with. So, I'm not sure it's not going to change the price of cocoa tomorrow or coffee. It's not going to make, householders or housewives feel any better when they go to the grocery, when they face the high grocery bills, the high food import bill that we as a nation are carrying. So therefore, in terms of the real and meaningful impact, it's nothing, I think, for the man in the street. It's really just a symbolic change. So, I'm not sure all the brouhaha over it is necessary in terms of the way it's being touted as if, well, it's any radical improvement or change. Yeah. Yes, I accept that, yes, historically, maybe we need to look at it and, think in terms of what a coat of arms supposed to represent, and if it's your identity, then sure, I have no difficulty with it being the pan. But, I mean, if it is that the government is then trying to parlay this as some victory or achievement on their part, then that I will rubbish, because, I mean, really and truly, it does nothing to improve the quality of life for the average citizen. So, in other words, if it is that, yes, we need to change it and we need to get on with it, yes, let's do so. But don't be taking a victory lap for doing so.
Yeah. Mr. George, when I speak with you, I like to put a number of issues on the table, and
yes,
I think
you like to put all your bags in one basket.
And on Sunday, this statement about Columbus's ships and so on, it was really a part of a number of statements that the Prime Minister spoke about in really removing the vestiges of colonialism, as he would have put it. And he also spoke about the Privy Council. Of course, the controversy over the years with the CCJ and the Privy Council. And I think he was speaking about that his government and Trinidad and Tobago, there should be a trust now towards really accepting the CCJ and moving away from the Privy Council, because I know that he would have also said that there may be a time where a government in the UK may say, well, here's what. We no longer want to have this arrangement with Trinidad and Tobago. You as an attorney, learned attorney, an experienced attorney, how do you feel about us really embracing in its entirety the CCJ and moving away from the Privy Council?
Well, the thing is, Marlon, one has to look at it from a judicial perspective and not just an emotional, point of view to say, well, as a nation, we ought to move away from the vestiges of colonialism. The fact is, the Privy Council has served us in the past. It has served us well in some cases. It has served us badly in some cases. But the reality is that there are some in the legal profession who are of the view that the distance and the separation which the Privy Council provides in terms of not being so close to the belly of the beast, so to speak, they appreciate that more than they seem to feel comfortable with the idea of the CCJ. There's the old saying that familiarity breeds contempt. And the reality is that, look, even among the CCJ, yes, we know some of the judges, some of them would have come up from amongst us. We have some on the CCJ, Justice of Appeal Jamada, Justice of Appeal Maureen Rajnath Lee, in fact, one of the former presidents who recently passed away, Michael de la Bastide, Ralston Nelson. We've had quite a few who have been, from amongst us, who have been on the CCJ. And they have been, stellar judicial officers with, excellent careers and reputations. So there's no gainsaying that, they have the ability, the competence to be able to make, rational and good and valid decisions and create sound judicial precedent. But as I say, there are some who remain of the view that, look, notwithstanding the clear and demonstrated competence of the CCJ judges, they simply feel that, the distance and separation of the Privy Council jurists gives them a sense of comfort to know that, look, they are in no way connected with or influenced by, any of the local happenings, and they therefore make their decisions, whether rightly or wrongly, because the Privy Council is not necessarily always right. They only seem to be right because there's no higher court above them. Let's recognize that fact. It's the same thing like the U.S. Supreme Court. It's just because there's no higher court above you to say, hey, you did nonsense, why they seem to be the ones who have the final say. So, in that regard, we have to wait and balance it from that perspective. But to the point where you made of the UK maybe saying, well, look, hey, it's time to go off on your own. They've actually said that to us already. It's just that we've refused to leave. We retain and cling on to the Privy Council, but they've made it very clear that they would like to be rid of us. But as I say, there are many who remain of the view that, look, they feel more comfortable with the distance which the Privy Council provides. And it's interesting when you think of, like, for instance, some of the recent decisions in terms of, like, for instance, granting bail for murder, and, other, significant decisions, Pratt and Morgan, there are persons who feel that maybe a CCJ comprised of judges who are, I guess, closer to the fire may not necessarily have ruled in that way. You look at, for instance, the situation with Vybz Kartel, where his matter went up to the Privy Council and the Privy Council remitted it to the local court in Jamaica. And there are some persons who feel that, look, the Jamaican courts then felt a sense of public pressure, resulting in their decision to free Vybz Kartel. As opposed to if it were, a body that were so far removed that they hadn't a clue who Vybz Kartel is, if you understand me, and his social impact.
So I think,
and stuff like that.
So I think that the situation is some people believe that as you would have stated, the Privy Council is too far away, and some people believe that the CCJ is too close to us. So then, where do we reach this balance? Just like the police service, I'm sure that you'll agree, Mr. George. There's a level of there's not a level of trust and confidence in the CCJ, and I think that in 2024, I'm just amazed that we're still having this conversation, and that no real and serious position has been put forward to here's what, let's embrace the CCJ in its entirety.
Well, okay, so let's just understand, Marlon. We do embrace it in its originating jurisdiction.
Yes.
All right? So, in other words, there are many matters, like, for instance, matters with Trinidad Cement Limited. There were matters with Guyana and the tariff and stuff like that, where we do embrace it in its original jurisdiction. the problem is with its appellate jurisdiction. In other words, with it becoming our final court of appeal, that's where Trinidad and Tobago has not signed on. Despite the fact that it's physically located and headquartered in Trinidad, we have not signed on to its appellate jurisdiction. And I think the hesitancy that you see in some quarters is founded in their concerns as to the closeness in terms of the nexus between the sitting members of the CCJ and the nation states in the Caribbean whom they have to basically preside over. Now, in fairness to the CCJ, I will tell you also, they also have widened their pool in the past, because we've had judges who have, Dutch training and origin. So, it's not that they are only pulling from, Caribbean-born and bred jurists. So, that's also something to consider. So I think, Marlon, in time, it may be inevitable that the change does occur, but I think we also have to be respectful of the views of those who feel that they prefer the impartiality of the Privy Council by the distance and separation which they innately have by not being a part and parcel of the Caribbean context or the West Indian diaspora, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm just thinking as you speak, how are other Caribbean countries expected to buy in to the CCJ, as you would have stated, and as is fact, you have the CCJ headquartered here, and Trinidad, which I'm sure that would have pumped in a lot of resources and money and so on to bring the CCJ to fruition, and there's still a concern about the appellate side of it, or the CCJ being a final court. So again, the question is, I was just rambling. The question is that how are other Caribbean countries expected to embrace it when we do still have these concerns?
Well, I would imagine that within their legal professions, within their, judicial systems, there would be those who would have similar concerns. I can give you a real and practical example, Marlon. There's a matter which our firm did, which did involve the CCJ, and part of the evidence that we used in the matter was a letter containing a clear admission by the president of the CCJ to say that, look, they had erred in the way they approached that matter. The thing is, we eventually prevailed in the matter, but, the thing is, you look at it and you wonder, well, how did it even reach to that? And you ask yourself whether personalities were not interjected in the scenario as opposed to that, your clear impartiality of, that arm's length of, well, look, I don't know the individuals involved. I don't know who is, the party A or party B, that kind of thing. So I think that really and truly it's a challenge that they face and will always face. And, the point is, the Bible tells us a prophet is never respected in his own town. And I think that's one of the challenges that the CCJ officers face and the CCJ judges face. And it's actually a bit unfair to them because really and truly, as I say, you have judges of the highest caliber, the highest judicial competence and capability sitting on that court. It's just that, as I say, there are some who feel that, look, they prefer still to have that distance and separation of judges who are so far removed from the heart of the action that they don't know any of the players involved.
Yeah. Mr. George, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for your perspective this morning. Bye for now.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, so we are going to a very short break.